Chapter 23. I got on the train, but it refused to move. It didn't even seem to be operating. I went to the controls and activated the holographic levers. The pink images appeared in front of me, and I pulled and pushed the ones I had before. The train quickly shot forward, and I barely had time to brace myself. The train felt like it was going a lot faster than it used to, and I wondered if I was driving it correctly. Oh well, the faster the train went, the faster I'd get to the island, right? Wrong. It still took 5 minutes. I started slowing down as soon as I reached the waterfall, but it was too late. I braced myself as the train shot into the station and slammed into a wall. The next thing I knew, I was on the floor. I got to my feet, feeling dizzy, and walked onto the platform. I checked my cell phone to see it was a little after midnight. It had been nearly an hour since I talked to Naoki. Had the battle begun? I grabbed a cart and drove to the village. When I got there, Esteban stepped out of the gatehouse and greeted me. After all I'd gone through myself, I just couldn't believe he was here. I wondered what he'd seen during his time on the island. "Hey, buddy," he said. I jumped out of the cart. "I need to get inside, and you need to leave the island." I wondered if that was even possible after I crashed a train. He just shook his head, grinning like a fool. "Not after what Rockney did to my grandpa. I'm not leaving until I see him pay." "Rockney will kill you if he finds out the real reason you're here. Does he even know who you really are?" "Hell no. He probably wouldn't have hired me if he knew. Either way, stuff is going down pretty soon. Shay and I are going to ambush him and disable his defenses so now he can step foot on the island and take over." It was my turn to shake my head. "Something's going to go wrong and we'll all die." "I'm willing to try. You're such a coward, Josh. You ran away the second things got bad. I'm not going to run away." "You didn't see what I saw," I yelled. "A friend was killed in front of me by a giant. Another guy melted in front of me and threw me through that window." I pointed to the repaired window to my left. "You can't judge me if you haven't gone through what I did, so shut up." I grabbed him and pushed him toward the cart. "Get out of here now. Go to the train. I'll help Naoki and Shay." He stared at me in shock, and for a second I actually thought he would do as I said. He could tell I meant every word I said, and that this place was more dangerous than he thought. Then he looked sharply to something behind me. "Oh, I don't think anyone's going anywhere," a familiar voice said. I turned and saw Rockney standing there in his sparkly glass suit. His arms were crossed. "You're both coming with me," he added, and waved his arms. Esteban and I were suddenly caught up in some kind of invisible binds that lifted us from our feet. Rockney turned and headed back to his magically repaired house. Esteban and I floated behind him. Once inside the house, Rockney let us go. We dropped to the floor. Shay, Victor, Champagne, and Astrid stood in the living room with us. "What's going on?" I asked everyone. "Well, I would ask you the same thing," Rockney replied. "I heard everything you two talked about out there. So, you've joined the dark side, Josh? Chose to side with Naoki in this war?" I didn't know what to say. I couldn't lie since he'd heard everything anyway, but I was afraid he'd strike me dead if I said yes. I looked at Shay, who seemed as worried as me. Did Rockney hear the part about her being involved? I hoped not. "I don't know," I finally said to Rockney. "He told me you were the one who caused the giants to riot. He said you did it to gain the support of Dargo Island because you couldn't take Naoki and his realm on your own." "Well, he was right about me not being able to match him on his home turf without help. Do you really think I had anything to do with the giants, Josh?" "How were they able to get into the village? They posed a threat, and the barrier didn't stop them. It didn't stop Trick either." "Isn't it obvious?" Rockney asked. "The barrier is strongest when a human is at post." He stepped closer to me. "You're not human, Josh." I suddenly became very angry. And you've known that for a while. Ever since Trick attacked me, at least. Shay told you to get me to the hot tub before I leached one of you guys. So why hire someone who isn't human? Ernie died that night because of you, Rockney. And you killed the Bells. A muscle twitched in his face. All of that is true. I can't deny your words. What? Champagne gasped, looking to Rockney sharply. Tell me that's not true. Rockney needed to gain the support of everyone against Nauki, I said. He killed the Bells because they saw with their power what he was up to. Then he tricked the Giants into attacking the Islanders and killing the king. That sealed the deal and gained the Dargonians' trust. Rockney appeared to shake, but it was so slight no one else noticed. Rockney, Victor said. What are you saying? Is this all true? How could you kill the Bells? And Ernie? Shut up, Rockney screamed. Don't play innocent. You couldn't have possibly been that stupid that you didn't figure this out sooner. Deep down, you knew what I was planning. I know you figured it out, Champagne. You've been looking at me funny for a while now. Did you read my emotions or something? I've been trying to dethrone Nauki for decades, but nothing I did worked. This is the only way to kill him once and for all. Throw everything I have at him, overwhelm him, and then take his head. Why didn't you just let him come to the island then? Shay asked, grabbing Astrid and pulling her closer. Then you could have fought him on your turf. He wouldn't come on land. He would have used the elements to strike at me. But that's what your suit is for, Astrid said, speaking for the first time. He can't see you in that. The suit doesn't protect me from a giant wave, honey. I've used almost all my power to shield this place from his attacks. Victor suddenly sprang toward Rockney, but the wizard waved a hand and sent him flying onto the dining room table in the next room. I didn't say I don't have enough power to kill everyone in this room, he added. Nauki isn't evil, I said. He just wants his daughter back. He only wants to defeat you because you're trying to kill him. Why can't you two live in peace? Rockney stared at me, and it actually looked like he was contemplating my words. Then he said, Because he's my brother, and we were destined to destroy each other. I would say I was shocked, but I wasn't. I'd read enough books to recognize a plot twist early on. Nauki gained the throne, and you didn't, I guessed. And you think I'm jealous, Rockney guessed. Well, I suppose I am. He has more power than me. If it hadn't been for the first war, he would be all-powerful all the time. He would be in all places all the time. He would be the most powerful creature in existence. And when you kill him, I said, you will gain all his powers and more. Since I'm the last in our bloodline, no one will be able to dethrone me. I will be the most powerful being. There can only be one nature demon at a time. I understand the appeal. Of course you do, Dr. DeBelko. How are you going to make all of us do what you say? You had to have used a lot of power controlling the giants. And you said your power is being used protecting the island? My magic may be weak, Rockney said with a smile, but my potion-making skills are still top-notch. I learned a few things from you, Champagne. I used them to control Cormac, after all. Since he was so big, it took quite a few applications. I worked on him every time he came to visit Astrid. Then I used him to influence the others to kill the king. Giants are pretty easy to get riled up, except when it comes to battling Nauki. I had to get them out of the way. He waved his hand at the dining table, and 6 cups appeared. There was purple liquid inside each one. I'm not drinking that, Esteban said. I gave him a look that shut him up. You can either drink my potion and join my army, Rockney said to him, or you can die, like your grandfather. I heard Esteban's knuckles crack as he made fists. I shook my head at him, and he relaxed slightly. I don't actually need any of you, you know, the old wizard continued. I'm giving you a fair choice here. I gave Mark the same choice when he found out about me, but he chose not to help. I had to erase his memory, and, well, he'd been on the island so long. The effects weren't kind.
What did you do to Mark?
Astrid asked, suddenly angry. I remembered that she had been friends with him before I took his job. He's wandering the streets of Dallas. His mind is a mess. I visit him sometimes. He saw the furious look on Astrid's face and added, I've tried to repair his mind, but there's nothing I can do. Champagne helped Victor to his feet, and they joined Estevan, Astrid, Shay, and me at the table. We took our cups, looked at each other one more time, and then we drank. My feet moved without me telling them to. The only things I could control were my eyes, and I used them to see my friends walking in sync with me. We followed Rockney out of the village. I didn't know where we were going at first, but then Rockney muttered a spell and we were suddenly in the palace courtyard. The palace was directly in front of us. I could hear the waves behind it, where Anila and I had talked so recently. Rockney walked up the grand stairs, and Reese approached him. He spoke with the guard for a moment, and then Reese stepped inside the palace. When he returned, he told Rockney to follow him. The rest of us followed. Inside the throne room sat Anila. Her face was painted blue with yellow stripes over her eyes, a variation of the usual half-blue, half-yellow that seemed to be the norm. She was dressed in a black suit, similar to the ones the guards wore. Battle wear? The time has come, my queen, Rockney told her. She nodded. Then she clapped and the entire room filled with guards. There had to be dozens. Anila looked at me and I tried to scream, to warn her we were being controlled, but I could only stare back. She walked up to me and touched my arm. Are you ready for this? She asked. All I could do was widen my eyes. Inside, I was screaming. Now I knew how Cormac felt that night. Help me. Oh, she said suddenly, touching my upper lip. You must be terrified. Your nose is bleeding. Rockney cleared his throat. Josh is a capable warrior and very brave. He'll be fine. I'll keep a close eye on him. Anila looked at him and then back at me. She gave Shay, Astrid, Victor, Estevan, and Champagne quick glances before going back to Estevan. Who's this? Josh's friend, Rockney quickly replied. Nauki killed his grandfather, so he was more than happy to join our fight to dethrone Nauki once and for all. She nodded her understanding. The entire island is ready to fight. That's over 200 strong. Do you think that will be enough? More than enough, Rockney smiled. Anila nodded before looking at Reese. Sound the bell, she ordered. The guard disappeared, and a moment later, we heard a bell ring from somewhere above us. We went back to the courtyard and were met by what appeared to be every islander. Hundreds had his and her faces painted yellow and blue. I couldn't imagine how we were all supposed to get to Nauki's realm. How do we get to Nauki? Anila asked, as if reading my mind. I can transport us all there, but doing so will require a lot of my power. I would have to lift the protections I've bestowed on the island. For a moment Anila stared at Rockney, considering. Then she said, Do it. Hopefully the island will still be here when we get back. Rockney nodded and waved his arms around. The waves grew louder, and I imagined the cliffside highway being drowned in seawater. Rockney then muttered another spell, and all I saw was light. When the light vanished, we were no longer on Dargo Island. I looked around and saw we were standing on clouds. They were the brightest things I could see since it was still late. The moon was right behind me, so close I felt I could hit it by throwing a rock. Everyone stay close, Rockney shouted at his army. The clouds are firm enough to walk on,
but you could easily fall over the edge if you're not careful.
The thought of falling to my death made my heart race. Would Rockney save me if I fell over the edge? I doubted it. He headed forward toward a large cloud shaped like a castle. The closer we got, the more it started to look like an actual castle. The clouds became firmer, though they were still clouds. I was reminded of a dream I'd had as a kid, one where I lived in the clouds. Everything was made of the stuff. It had been a fun dream, but this was a nightmare. If Naoki died, Rockney would take over and become the most powerful being in the world. If only Naoki hadn't been weakened in the last battle. How had he gotten so easily weakened, though? If he'd been the most powerful being ever, what had been done to him? The only thing I could think of was the spell he put on Shay when she was pregnant with Astrid. That had been the last thing he'd done before he'd grown weak. At least, that's what I figured from Ernie's story. Naoki must have put a lot of passion into that spell. What if Naoki did need Astrid in order to regain his power? As we got closer to the cloud castle, I saw dark things running toward us. They stood out so much because of the white clouds. I saw at least 20 of them. Shay, Astrid, Champagne, Victor, Estevan, and I started running, and I knew it wasn't because we wanted to. The islanders gave a battle cry and started running after us. Rockney was making us confront the creatures. I wasn't too worried about myself, but I was afraid for my friends. They didn't have the power to leech someone's life like I did. If they died, they would be gone forever. I tried to fight Rockney's power over me, but his will was too strong. Naoki's army was 50 feet away, I guessed. In seconds we would collide. The creatures looked like gorillas. I was the first one to go down. The creature collided with me, and I definitely felt it. It bit my neck, which I also felt. I saw giant bat wings on its back, and I guessed it was a vampire. The islanders ran past me. No one was helping me. I was getting weaker by the second, and then I grew stronger just as fast. The vampire let go of my neck and collapsed next to me, gasping. It was dying. I jumped to my feet, fully restored. I hadn't noticed at first, but I had told myself to stand up. I looked around and saw the vampires giving the Dargonians a run for their money. Nearly a dozen islanders were lying dead on the cloud ground. My friends weren't among them. I ran after the two armies, which were moving toward the castle. One person ran up the stairs and into the keep's entrance, and I could tell from the shiny suit it was Rockney. I tried to run after him, but another vampire grabbed me by the neck and threw me over the edge. I started to fall, but stopped a few seconds later. I floated in midair for a moment, and then floated back up. The vampire that tried to kill me stared in shock before suddenly catching on fire. It fell over the edge just as I took its place on the firm cloud. Rockney stood a few feet away, his right arm raised in front of him. He saved me. Before I could move toward him, he turned and ran up into the keep again. I didn't know if he was aware I'd regained control of my body, but it didn't seem to matter. I wouldn't be able to catch up with him before he found Naoki. I tried to move around the battle, but there were so many fighting bodies in my way. So many Dargonians died in front of my eyes. Rockney's potion must have enhanced our ability to fight, because I saw Champagne and Shay taking out a couple of vampires each. I never would have guessed Champagne could move that fast. Victor swung his axe like nobody's business, cutting down vampires left and right. A couple of vampires ganged up on Anila, and I was about to help her, but Astrid appeared out of nowhere and killed them. I ran up to my friends. Astrid, my potion wore off. We have to stop Rockney from killing Naoki. She showed no sign of understanding me, though I knew she did. She went back to fighting the vampires. Anila, on the other hand, looked worried.
What are you talking about?
She asked me. Rockney's behind everything. Naoki is innocent. He tricked you into helping him, and now he's inside the castle. We have to stop him. She only thought about this for a second before nodding.
Let's go.
We raced up the cloud stairs and entered the keep.